live longer? I mean, not just think about living longer, but actually do something that could, in fact, make you live longer. Well, one way to do this is to treat aging as a disease. But 60, I'm a third-generation medical doctor. I've never heard of any of this. This is complete nonsense. Well, here's the thing. Up until about 5 or 10 years ago, aging was, biomedically speaking, considered an unchangeable phenomenon. So, if you can't see that something is possible, like actually retarding the aging process, then you can't see a solution to that problem. So while none of the following constitutes medical advice, here we go with 8 things you can do to treat aging like a disease. Number 1, one of the first things you can do is to practice some form of breath control or pranayama, what's otherwise known as breath retention. Now, many different forms of this exist, from Tibetan yoga's troll core to classical Hindu yogic pranayama to simple breath-holding exercises as you would experience in free diving. Why would you want to do this? Turns out one of the big hallmarks of aging is decreased lung capacity. Some studies seem to suggest that by the time someone is 70 years of age, their lung capacity is actually 1/3 what it was when they were 20. Now here's the funny part. You can actually increase your lung capacity. There have been many studies done on competitive swimmers that, when shown breath retention exercises, were able to add as much as 1 to 2 liters to their lung capacity. And competitive freedivers have been shown to have lung capacities in excess of 8 liters in some cases. So, here's something to consider. The next art, or number 2 to consider, is an ancient Chinese art known as Shishegun. Sometimes this is popularized as genital weightlifting. Okay, 60. Why would someone want to do this? Well, it turns out, by doing this and involving yourself in a few lifestyle changes, you can actually elevate and permanently maintain the production of your endocrine system. In men, this largely has to do with testosterone, and in women, it has to do with maintaining proper levels of estrogen. I personally have seen blood work on individuals who, after practicing this art for between 90 and 180 days, tripled their baseline testosterone levels. Now, these men had very low levels of testosterone to begin with, but here's the curious part. They did it without the use of any drugs or herbs or supplements. And all of these men were in their 50s and 60s. Now, while this only qualifies as a case study level event, it is something to consider. Also keep in mind that I personally have seen far too many practitioners of this art walking around in their 80s and 90s, living an otherwise full life, at a point at which most human beings have a hard time getting up out of their chair. So you can take a look at Shishegun, or genital weightlifting, as a way of maintaining your body's endocrine system production as you get older. And so that, no joking aside, is number 2. Now we come to our third event that we can engage in, and that is known as resistance training. But we're not just talking about any form of resistance training here. Specifically, I would like to mention 2 potential courses of action here. Number 1 would be Olympic weightlifting. Olympic weightlifting is a very interesting art that has received a lot of popularity in the last 20 to 30 years with the growing rise of course, CrossFit. However, Olympic weightlifting predates this by quite a large margin. And Olympic weightlifting is interesting in that it is a form of resistance exercise that takes the body through a complete natural plane of movement. This in turn strengthens every other part of the body. And the reason why you want to do this is very simple. When people get older, there's a phenomenon known as sarcopenia, or wasting of muscle mass. Things like Olympic weightlifting or barbell training in general can combat this. In fact, there have been many studies conducted that showed people could even add muscle to their body in their 70s, 80s, and 90s as a result of resistance training. Now, as people get older and they haven't been in shape, sometimes they develop some range of motion issues. So, Olympic weightlifting might not be possible for them. However, old school black iron gym barbell training is. And contrary to popular belief, it's not only not dangerous for older people, but actually quite good for them and can tend to result in a restoration of motion and strength across the complete sphere of human activities. This in turn makes it much more likely that you're going to fall out of your chair and break a hip. So once again, we are addressing aging as a disease by taking care of the problem associated with simply being too weak. Another way you can live longer, or our fourth way, involves fasting. Well, why do you want to engage in fasting? It turns out fasting can help maintain your metabolic flexibility, or for lack of a better term, your metabolic fitness. Even a 72-hour or 3-day fast, once a quarter, has been shown to have profound changes on a human being's blood work that corresponds to fasting as much as 1 day a week otherwise. Now, fasting has a long tradition in the meditative and yogic arts, and for good reason. You see, the modern world we live in, where you have food available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, is in fact an unnatural event. Now again, I'm not suggesting you starve yourself on a regular basis. However, a programmed fast of up to 3 days or 72 hours once a quarter has been shown in a variety of studies to have many benefits on things like carbohydrate tolerance, blood glucose levels, endocrine system performance, prevention of diabetes, amongst others. So if you want to live longer, once every 3 or 4 months, take a 3-day break from eating anything at all. Just make sure to remain hydrated and get plenty of salts. Next, number 5, we have another art out of Asia that most people haven't heard of. It is called Moxabustion. Now, Moxabustion is the application of 3-year-old aged and dried mugwort root that is burned upon the skin. Turns out this has a very interesting effect on regulating the immune system in the body. Now, the art of Moxabustion itself is a 2-year degree in places like Japan, but if you go back and read older works on traditional medicine, particularly out of China, it turns out Moxabustion has been known for extending lifespan for a very long time. Daily application of Moxabustion, particularly once over the age of 30, has seemed to have a regulatory effect not only upon the immune system, but also upon the endocrine system. There are many studies that have shown that regular application of this can do things like drop cholesterol levels, retard heart disease, and cause a variety of other functions that make people live longer. The exact mechanism is not entirely understood. What is supposed, however, is that the body can't tell when it's been burned. So, if you just burn a pinprick on the skin, the body tends to respond in the same way as if a large portion of the body were actually burned. This, in turn, tends to make the immune system pay attention. And decreased immunity is a major hallmark of disease as people get older. So once again, by immune system and properly regulating it, we are combating aging as a disease. Now we have another addition from Asia known as acupuncture. Acupuncture has started to receive a lot of attention over the last decade or two in Western circles for its ability to regulate the neurological system of the body. Now, whether you believe in the mythical Qi or not, and of course many viewers on this channel will, there are, however, have been many studies shown that acupuncture is, at a minimum, very useful for controlling pain, regulating the autonomous nervous system, and helping with a variety of other nervous or nerve-related issues within the body. Again, as we get older and our body racks up damage, your neurological system can develop some bad habits. On a practical basis, frequent and regular application of acupuncture seems to help with all this and simply seems to make the body work better. So once again, we are looking at treating aging as a disease by, in this case, dealing with some of the damage that we tend to rack up over a period of years just by walking around as human beings. Now we come to an item that anybody can do and is basically free. This involves simply walking around. See, as it turns out, studies of primitive groups of human beings living in a tribal environment these days seem to indicate that most people in these tribal environments walk around about 4 hours a day. Now, this corresponds to roughly 12 miles a day. Can you think of the last time you walked around for 12 miles? Probably hasn't happened very often. Now, the good news is if you're not walking around enough, many studies have been done that have shown just walking around a little extra, getting in 5,000 to 6,000 steps a day, is a good aid to overall fitness. Not only is it a nice way to lose weight, but it also helps you clear your mind and makes the body work better. When you start walking as much as 7,000 to 10,000 steps a day, some of the results that you can have on your blood work, for example, cholesterol, A1C, and other type things, can be quite profound. In fact, a common pre-diabetic intervention simply has people go out and walk for at least 2 hours a day. Now, again, this is free, doesn't cost you anything, and in general is going to help you relax. But here's the important part. Maintaining mobility as we get older is a choice. So if you spend your entire life sitting around, as you get older, you're probably going to develop mobility problems. You know what the best way to avoid mobility problems is? Yep, you guessed it, keep on moving. So walking is a really key way of combating aging as a disease. Next, we come to our 8th item, and perhaps the most important of the group. And believe it or not, you know what that is? Simply getting 8 hours of sleep a night. Well, okay, 8 hours of sleep a night, as you will. But the point is that too many people don't get enough rest. Depending upon who you ask, many studies have indicated that your average person in a developed society may get as little as 6 hours of sleep. Over time, this significantly impacts your recovery. In fact, it's been shown that general human awareness after one night of missed sleep is the equivalent of somebody having 3 drinks in a bar and attempting to drive. So one of the cheapest interventions you can engage in that can extend your lifespan is simply to sleep longer if you're not getting enough sleep. Again, when you sleep, this is when your body recovers. We talk a lot about the stress adaptation cycle on this channel, but what people tend to forget is the recovery part that actually results in the adaptation. While overtraining is, in practice, actually harder to do than most people think, damaging yourself through not getting enough sleep is relatively easy. As anyone who's ever had a young child can tell you, a week of not getting adequate rest because your newborn baby is waking up 4 times a night can wreck virtually anybody. If this bad habit is continued over a period of years, the effects are truly destructive. So, one of the best things you can do for yourself to help combat aging as a disease is simply to get enough rest. So I hope everybody enjoyed today's talk on aging as a disease and things that you can do about it. If you'd like to learn more about things that you can do to help combat the aging process and maybe get a little more time on the clock, if not have better activity while you're at it, come check out 60skills.com and look at the Master Course or the Kabbalah course. Otherwise, as per usual, train hard and be well.